Hello and welcome to Healthy Living, reaching you from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Olamide Al-Hassan. On November 18, 2022, WHO launched a new strategy to respond to the urgent problem of anti-malaria drug resistance in Africa. The strategy was released during World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, a global annual campaign to improve awareness of the growing threats of resistance to antibiotics and other medicines. In recent years, there have been reports from Africa of emerging parasite resistance to the best available medicines to treat malaria. There are also worrying signs that parasites in some areas may be resistant to drugs that are commonly combined for treatments. And it's no news that we're currently going through a difficult situation with malaria, and not just because it's malaria, but because it is resistance to some of the drugs we knew, and that has resulted in most persons treating malaria even more than once a month. Hence, vigorous measures are needed to protect the efficacy of our anti-malaria drugs. On this episode of Healthy Living, member Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, Pharmacist Samuel Adamatie, joins us to shed light on tackling anti-malaria drug resistance. You're welcome to the studio, Pharmacist Adamatie.
Okay, thank you very much and good evening.
It's a pleasure to have you in the studio again. You've become a household. Well, thank you for always being so resourceful whenever we call you.
Thank you very much.
So today we're discussing what is rampant and what everybody's willing to ask questions about. Why? Why have we suddenly become resistant to anti-malaria? Why do we have drugs that are becoming resistant to anti-malaria? Because that's what we want to believe it to be. But is there something like a malaria that is resistant to drugs?
Okay, so you wanted to say why are we not having drugs? We're having drugs now that organisms are resistant to. We're talking about anti-malaria drug resistant. But let's first of all look at what resistance is generally from our own literal meaning. It's okay. Someone is here, you have an intruder, and you're trying to take the person away from your presence, and the person is trying to prevent you from taking the person out. Trying to prevent, so it's resisting arrest. Maybe the person has more power, has more energy per se, or the person is carrying a weapon that prevents you from going to meet, because when you know that if you go try to arrest the person, you might get hurt yourself. So that's resistance. Same thing, it happens with drug and organisms too. So generally it talks about when the drug loses its effectiveness. For you to lose effectiveness means what it's supposed to go and do to kill an organism, to eradicate an organism, is not doing it, even if it's there in the presence of the organism. It must be in the presence of the organism. So, like I always say when I come here, we all have our own different truth, but different from the fact. So let's use an authority that guides us.
I trust you always do that.
So let's so from WHO, what it says about anti-malaria drug resistance, it said is the ability of the organism to survive and or replicate. So there's a survivor, they can go further to replicate. So either you survive, you're still there, and replicate, or you just survive alone. That's why you say, okay, so survive and or replicate, despite the administration and absorption. So take note, administration and absorption of a drug that is equal to that level that's supposed to give a therapeutic effect for that person. You know, you have children, you have adults, you have a dose for adults, or a tolerable level. Meaning that after you've passed, you can increase the dose to one that the person can tolerate. Meaning that it causes some side effect, but the person can manage it, not to a toxic level. A toxic level means it's going to be harmful to the organs. So you can see there are three keywords there. First one is talk about administration and absorption of the drug. So what it means is that resistance will not only does not occur when you just administer a drug alone. The drug must also be absorbed and be in the presence of that organism. So that's why you see that, okay, a patient comes, is taking an anti-malaria, tells you, I took this particular anti-malaria, it didn't work for me. But I took this other one, it worked for me. A pharmacist will now look at it and look at it to find out that they have the same content, but A is not working for the patient, but B is working. What it's actually telling you is that, for A not to work, it definitely means for A not to work and B is working, it means that once the organism sees that excipient, it's able to kill the organism. So what might likely happen to A that's not working is that A was administered quite well, but maybe it might not be absorbed. And what can cause a drug from being absorbed might be the fact that for a drug, another drug, they have different agents inside that will cause the drug to disintegrate, then dissolute. Disintegrate and dissolute means increase the surface area so that it can be absorbed easily to the body. So if it ends at that level whereby it gets to the system, it does not disintegrate, it cannot be absorbed, then to leave the system. You will not come and say it's not working, the absorption is that you are resistant. But the pharmacist will know better because he knows that if it's resistant, it should be resistant to another brand that has the same content. But another brand is working. So that's why I said for resistance to occur, it must be administration and absorption in the presence of the organism is not working. That's one part. For resistance to occur, the drug must be taken at that level that is required for therapeutic effect.
Okay.
So you have most of this antimalarial now, the one that is standardized, the one that is known to be used is the artemisinic combination therapy. And for maybe an adult, you have the 8480. So instead of taking 8480, I'm taking 2120. And it's not working. I won't call that as resistance because I'm not taking that dose that is supposed to be for my level.
Wow.
That's not resistant. So you're taking on that dose. So, but if the person takes the drug, doesn't say it's not working. You now, if you meet a medical professional, a pharmacist will not ask you, what did you take? What's the name? At what dose? That we can be sure you're actually resistant.
Okay.
Then two, for resistance to occur, like the authority I've mentioned two now, it means that the organism will survive in the presence of that drug and also multiply. If it doesn't multiply, survives alone, fine. That's what we said is survive and or multiply. So these are the three things you see for you to say a drug, you're having anti-malaria drug resistant.
Okay.
The dose matters, the survival of the organism matters, and also the administration and absorption of that drug.
You know, before now, we just used to believe that when you take drugs and they don't work, they don't, give you what you want in your body, simply means that you're probably resistant to them. In as much as I know that there are also situations where people take some specific medications and they become resistant to them, like antibiotics.
Yes.
Some persons are resistant to antibiotics.
Yes.
But that's on the side. Another thing I was wondering is, how possible is it that people take drugs and they don't, they are not absorbed in the body? How possible is that?
We have gotten to another angle. Now, so many things can affect absorption of a drug.
Okay.
One of the facts is that if a drug manufacturing has issues, because that's why we tell people before you take a drug, seek the advice of a medical professional, a pharmacist in particular, who are an authority when it comes to drug, because they will be sure if this drug was well formulated or not, mere looking at it. Because a drug doesn't only contain the actual excipients, the actual active ingredients rather. It also contains excipient, meaning attachments, adjuvants that will enable the drug to be well delivered to its site of action. And so you have a disintegrating agent on that drug that you take the tablet and it gets to the system. When the body fluid begin to act on it from the stomach, and it easily opens up, the drug easily disintegrates to release the active. Also the dissolution, it will also dissolve very well in the body system. Those are some of those tests they carry out in the tests in the lab before they now manufacture the drug. So it's not like, okay, I have this anti-malaria combination, how do I put it into this person's body? So you have to add those things together. So if in the process of manufacturing, those things are not properly well standardized, you have a drug that you just take, you are taking a chalk, it will not be just be there in the system and leave. It will not be absorbed. And
that means the bulk of that, fault will be on the PSN and PCN.
We can say that not total. NAFDAC is also there. Those are people that, because for you to get a drug into a system, like in Nigeria, most times we don't really manufacture some of it. We do manufacture, but not totally. So whether we are manufacturing or importing, NAFDAC is always there to be able to make sure those drugs that you are bringing in meet standards. Okay. And they have their labs where they are supposed to check whether they are doing that or not. I don't know, but I know that's a responsibility. That's one. Then two, the gastrointestinal makeup can even be one of the things that can affect absorption. Like, for example, now we're talking about this drug, this vitamin B, for example, now is the stomach, you call it parietal cell that produces intrinsic factor that enables vitamin B to be B12 rather to be absorbed from the gastrointestinal tract. Talking about the ileum. If one is having issues, there's lack of intrinsic factor in the body, your vitamin B12 will not be absorbed, and so the effect on the body will not be. So sometimes genetic makeup can also affect absorption of the individual. I just give an example of vitamin B12. So we can look at those two things that can affect absorption of a drug. We are not talking about absorption now, we're talking about resistance generally. But we're trying to say that for you to say resistance must occur, the oxygen will be there, the drug will be there. And for the drug to be there, in the presence of the organism, means the drug must be absorbed when taken, when administered.
All right. That's it. So now let's look at some of the causes, of this resistance.
Okay. Causes of resistance. Now, I tried to put them into two categories: the human aspect and the parasite itself. Since we're talking about malaria now, anti-malaria drug resistance. For the human aspect, one of the causes of anti-malaria drug resistance is one, unregulated ways of taking our drugs. Then 2, poor administration of the drugs itself. So let me try and explain. Okay. For the poor administration aspect, someone takes an anti-malaria drug to treat malaria. And instead of taking it for the duration of time which has been proposed by the medical professional or the pharmacist or maybe the nurse, you start to take it for 2 days. That can lead to resistance in a sense that there's not complete eradication of the organism. I give an example. You have 2 communities fighting for a particular purpose. Maybe they have conflicts. And so they came, this one brought weapons, cutlasses and the likes. The other one did not bring. So definitely the one that has weapons will overpower the one that did not come with weapons. But instead of killing everybody, they left about maybe 5 or 10 persons alive. Those ones go back to their clan and say, when these guys came to fight us, they came with weapons. So when they are going back, they will definitely come with weapons. Yes, so that they can withstand. So that's something that happens. When you take that drug for 2 days instead of 3 days, you don't completely eradicate it. So what happens is that the organism already knows that something came to kill us. Let us begin to proliferate, meaning give birth to offspring that have a stronger backbone that can fight against that drug. So you see where it's resistant. So you don't take the drug in less time when the person comes down with malaria and it's not working. So not that the drug is substandard, but just that you have caused it because you don't. Or the other way around, you overuse a drug. Any little thing you feel is malaria, you go get an anti-malaria drug and you get the same brand. With time, the better you know that it's always coming. This is the drug you're always bringing in. The organism now is getting used to it. Let's start making. That's why we always advise people, do not be on a particular brand of anti-malaria for long. Oh. Always be alternating.
So what's your idea of long now?
Yes. So I can say, okay, for how long? I've taken this anti-malaria for 6 months, 1 year, a particular one every time. Okay. So no, go to another combination. But there are a lot of combinations, just so that the organism doesn't know what's always coming. It's always, not that I'm expecting this antimicrobial combination, so I'm always ready.
These organisms are being described like human, like...
So they're living, and they don't have sense. So they know this, that's why resistance comes. So that one. Then 2, counterfeit or substandard drugs. That's another human factor that can cause resistance. Counterfeit here, you mean you have a drug, but the drug does not contain the active ingredient in the right quantity or proportion. So it's substandard. For an adult, for example, you say 8480 for that combination, but you write 8480 at the label, but what is actually the content is 40-240 or 2120. That is why we say see a pharmacist, a medical consultant, a medicine consultant, or a physician to actually tell you, okay, this is a good anti-malaria. So that you don't go and get substandard. Substandard counterfeit can often come in the sense that they claim that this is the anti-malaria that is inside, whereas it's a different active ingredient. So you are writing 8480 antimicrobial combination, but it can be chalk or a different kind of drug that's inside. But the label is saying that, and so the layman show cannot differentiate. He just buys and drink. And that's so you can see resistance cannot come because the organism is there. So if something came to attack, what's this? This is not what I need now. So the organism begin to get stronger, fortifies itself. That's it. Then the third part of the human aspect is there's an assigned standard way of taking a drug. There, for example, I talk about the combination, this and this together for malaria. You are not taking one and you not take the complementary dose of the other. That can lead to, like we talked earlier at the back end then when you said, okay, most of these anti-malaria come, they are fixed dose, but there are also some that are not fixed dose. This one is here, this one. You have the SPs, Sevadosine, Perimentamine, they are on their own. You have artesunate on its own. The people that want to they still like artesunate today. They just like it because then it was working very well for them. So they prefer, they don't want to. So you always tell them, go after taking it, don't forget to go and add this one to it. If not, resistance can occur because of the way the parasite works in the system. Okay,
and because you're stating some of these causes in the human factor, it reminds me of a discussion we had on drug misuse, where you talked about sometimes we're supposed to take drugs with water, and then we end up taking it with probably drinks and all of that. Could that also contribute to, the resistance?
Well, fantastic question you asked there. That's necessarily will not contribute to resistance because from our definition, we said the presence of the organism before resistance comes. What those things does is that they cause interaction. So when they cause interaction, if you take, like I said, you take your jar of water, you take it with a drink, a cold drink, either they chelate the drug, if the cold drink contains some excipient, maybe iron and the likes, so the drug will never even get to the organism. Or they turn that drug to something else because the mixture of what is in the drink and the drug gets you another product entirely. So you are not saying, you have something that gets to the organism, but you don't have a drug that gets to the organism. Remember our definition. The drug will be present and the organism, so that's why you talk about resistance. But that misuse aspect, you don't, the drug is not even there because the what you have taken has prevented the drug from even going or getting on that product entirely.
Yes.
So, but the point that the layman on the street, the bottom line is, both of them, the end result is the drug will not work. But the long term is
a lot of people treating malaria, putting it inside a bag.
Exactly. We are not talking about drug misuse here. So
I just remember that's why I had to ask you.
Good. But the point, the end point is that the layman come and this drug is not working. It's not you as the professional that will know, is this a resistant aspect issue or is this an issue of drug interaction or misuse rather? It's an issue of misuse or an issue of drug resistance. You need to be able to now differentiate them. But the end point is always the same. It did not work.
All right. So the second factor now.
Yes. Okay. Yes. The human aspect. So I give myself let me use it as an example.
Okay.
You have taken your drug very well for the anti-malaria. You follow the doctor's prescription twice a day.
I'm very diligent with
yes, yes, and they say for 3 days you did that for 3 days. You don't overuse drug. Whenever it's needed, you ask the physician to say, okay, let's change like this. When you get your drug, you're sure of where you're getting it. They advise you so you get very good standard drug. You take the complementary aspect of it. Say this is what you take after, now you take the next. You follow these procedures. But your friend, your neighbor, is that one that doesn't care, misuses his or a drug, takes them whenever he likes, or he doesn't even care where he or she buys, and she has developed the strain, the malaria parasite, that resistant strain because of what has happened. The malaria vector, which is the female anopheline mosquito, bites that person, takes that organism, which is the plasmodium, that resistant strain is having, and takes it to you. So you are having a resistant malaria for what you did not cause. Somebody else that caused it, but it was the organism that is not the cause, because it was the parasite, not the vector that's not the cause, but the vector that took that strain and brought to you. It happens most times when people travel to, you have a resistant strain, you travel to another environment or another community and begin to spread it like that there. So you've done well, but somebody else has caused it. That's why we say it's a collaborative effort. It's me alone. As long as I'm taking my drug, I'm fine. No. You need to advise the next person. You have to know that they need to also take theirs.
I've been wondering, sometimes you find, even in a work environment, almost everybody, for instance, if you're down, the next person will probably be down in the next 2 days, in the next 3 days. And it's been, bringing up a lot of questions in people's minds, like, has malaria become so contagious that everybody would, start falling ill once one person falls ill?
Another good question that you ask now. Now, when you mean contagious, it's not human now. There's a vector that carries it, which is the female anopheline mosquito. And you see there's environment, there's environment that's conducive for them. So you have a dirty environment, most time it happens during the rainy season and the like. So these are persons that sleep in the same apartment, the same house. So the parasite, the vector rather, comes, bites, takes the parasite and goes to the next person. So A has malaria, B has malaria. So it's not like a sexually transmitted infection, where it will be from one person to the other. So if there's no contact, you won't have it. But this particular one is the vector. Is there, it's flying, your sleep is bites, it takes blood, like sipping it goes to the next and deposits it. So you see that's where that comes in. So that's why there's every tendency that once malaria attacks one person, it goes like that. Then the times that they are more pronounced, especially when it's seasonal, most times when during the rainy season. So that you see that's where it comes into play. Then you also, I think you mentioned something at the background then, that what is not causing it?
Yes, because I was going to go there, because the question everybody is asking is, malaria is not new to us.
Yes.
So why is it that suddenly there's resistance to it when we take medications? What is really happening?
Okay, you look at the causes that we mentioned, then look at the peculiarity of our environment. Our environment is one of the most unregulated environment when it comes to access to drugs. Drugs accessibility is not well regulated in this our Nigerian environment. Every Tom, Dick and Harry can just go and get any drug they like, whether they know about it and the likes. Every Tom, Dick and Harry can come and prove to you that he knows he's a medical doctor. I'm a doctor, whereas you don't even have an idea of how to read medicine or how to read pharmacies. Every Tom, Dick and I can go online and claim that they have one drug for this and this, or can claim that anti-malaria is better than the others. Because of easy accessibility to drugs, there's every tendency that people can tend to misuse drug or have access to substandard drug or counterfeit drug. Regulation also comes from the government. NAFDAC, they're trying, but how well are they trying in terms of regulation of drugs that are imported into this country? I've seen a lot of times whereby you see an anti-malaria drug, it doesn't work, and you now find out that this does not contain the rightful incipient from some countries. And we don't start mentioning countries. Because some countries will tell you, that's why it's a pharmacist that knows all this, that any drug you are producing here that you want to export, make sure you maximize profits, even if at the expense of that country. So for example, I'm producing a drug here, and I find out that I'm going to lose. So instead of me losing, let me reduce the recipient and make my gain a profit, and let me send it. You know, the pharmacist in this other part that is receiving, that knows these are the countries you should get this drug from. So when I see anti-malaria, I know this where they are coming from. I can know which one I can advise you to take. But the layman will not know that. That's why you need a professional to always do that. So that's why you see people becoming resistant. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that's accessibility, easy access. Yes. That is our own attitude. We Nigerians tend to misuse drug a lot. When they say take a drug for 3 days, you take it for 2 days and you stop. I can speak to you now. I wish this guy is listening. There's a guy that is on anti-malaria drug now presently. Gave him. He took the first day, second day. The third day, I come and take the drug. I'm coming, I had to go to my office and wait for him. I called him. He said, I just woke up from sleep. Pharmacist, let it be Tuesday or so because he feels already better. I had to talk and talk and talk. So, you see, one thing with Nigerians, when they are getting better, they stop taking their drugs. It's an attitude that, let's understand that this can not only affect you, can affect your neighbor, can affect your friend if you develop a strain. So you see, that's why it's becoming common. Now, in the past was chloroquine in the 90s.
Yes. After
chloroquine resistance was observed, they now switched to the artemisinin combination. But now we are beginning to see that people are becoming resistant to the artemisinin combination. That's why somebody is taking a particular antimalarial orally, is still having the same symptoms until the person switch to an injectable. Do you want to switch to an injectable that will cause pain, that people are scared of needles and the likes? You don't want to switch to it, but you're seeing yourself switch to it because your attitude, your behavior, whether you or people around you have made you now you are now becoming resistant to the known ones that have been approved by WHO that should be used. So you see where our attitudes are coming into being.
Of course.
So that's why one of the reasons, that's why this is good you're talking about this. People should be enlightened to know that if they say take it for 3 days, take it for 3 days. Don't say I'm taking it until I'm better. Until I'm better is not the word. It's the duration. Because taking it for 2 days and you're better does not mean you're well. Because the organisms are still there. There's a particular level an organism get to that you now see the symptom. When it's small in the body, your body fights it itself.
Okay.
Then your body cannot defeat it. It gets to a particular level. You now take a drug to assist. So the drug is bringing it down. So when it's getting to a level, you are getting better. But it does not go to a level that's eradicated.
But there's another question I have for you that, though it's not, proven, but yes, words on the streets, I always want to bring out words on the streets so that you can correct some notions. And people believe that ever since COVID-19 came,
yes,
we've been prone to some of these, ailments, flu here and there. So does this have anything to do with the resistance that we're now having, or it's just people assuming things?
In my own opinion, COVID-19 dealt with the world generally. Because of that COVID-19 scourge, or like call it pandemic, the health system has never been the same. You can even look at it in Nigeria. Now you see that, the system, most of the known drugs we use are becoming very scarce because resources have gone into COVID, and so those ones began to suffer. But we will not link that to a cause of resistance. No.
Okay.
No. COVID, respiratory tract issues and the likes, and also because of that COVID, by extension, the resistance of malaria now comes in. There's no connection. But COVID itself affected the health system generally. Other people, resources that we have used to make other drugs or produce other drugs or into research for other drugs was used majorly for COVID because of the way it came and it affected. But we are not playing a part.
You know why I had to ask that question?
Yes.
Because sometimes you hear people say, I don't think it's malaria we're treating.
Okay.
It's something else that is beyond malaria. Yes. Because you will find one person probably treating malaria like twice in a month.
I agree with that. Now, you are coming to the aspect of the COVID symptoms then. Some of it also look like someone having malaria.
Exactly.
So there's still that thought and tendency that, okay, since there was COVID that existed, and we all knew the symptoms of COVID, and so they're more likely to be malaria, the symptom malaria. So somebody is not getting better from malaria, may likely be maybe from this aspect too, because it has happened. Nobody's looking at, is he resistant? Am I having a resistant strain? Another thing is that since we could not still find the cure for COVID, so you can't tell us COVID or not COVID now. And like, so let's not bring that in, but we've not completely eradicated it. So people still have that tendency. That's why the bottom line is you go do a test. So somebody comes now, Olamide, and says, I've taken drug A and B. Or I took drug A, and this week again I'm coming down with malaria. I don't say to repeat an anti-malaria again. I say go and run a test. So if you run a test, I will not know if you are having a resistant malaria. But I have to be sure, what drug did you take?
Okay.
First. To be sure that particular brand, I'm sure of it. If you now took 2, okay, you're having a resistant malaria, I will not know.
Is there a basis to know if somebody's malaria is resistant besides the fact that they've taken drugs and it didn't work? Is there another way to tell if their malaria is resistant?
Well, if you run a test, from a test result, you will know if the person is having a resistant malaria because you see the result that the person is still positive.
Oh.
You have taken a drug and it's still positive. It means 2 things. Resistance. In quote, resistance. Because now, I, as the pharmacist, I do not know if that drug you took was absorbed.
Oh.
But the bottom line, it didn't work. So I will tell you that you are resistant to it. And the assumption is that you bought a good drug, so it should be absorbed. Unless you tell me this is the drug I bought. And you get the point. And so we are so from our definition, we just told these are the things that can cause it. But practically, how you can know is I've run a test. I took a drug 1 week ago, and I'm feeling the symptom. Repeat that test, and there's malaria. I mean, that drug will not work. Right. That drug will not work. It's either you're having resistant issue, or you're having issue of fake in terms that you took a drug that was you administered the drug but was not absorbed.
All right.
But the point is that I've seen that the drug will not work, so I assume we are together. It's resistant to you. But if we now probe further, I will now, where did you buy this drug from? What is the name of the drug you bought? Those are the questions I will now ask to be shocking. I don't think this is a resistant issue. I think this is the counterfeit issue. Go and get another anti-malaria. Where did you buy the drug from?
Okay.
How much did you buy? Because sometimes, when hearing the cost of the drug, you need to buy chalk.
All right.
So
let's go on a break before you talk more on buying chalk. All right, viewers, I'm sure you're enjoying the conversation. Let's go on a quick break. When we return back, Pharmacist Adamatie will still be in the studio educating us. Stay with us. Back, viewers, we're still discussing tackling anti-malaria drug resistance with Pharmacist Samuel Adamatie. All right, before we went on the break, you were talking about people could buy chalk.
When I use chalk, I use it. I use it. There's a word I want. I'm not good with English, but listen, let me know. We use chalk.
So long as our viewers understand what you're saying.
They should get the point is that you won't go and see your hand and go and buy chalk and say this is an anti-malaria.
Yeah, I understand.
The point is that tablet is not. It does not contain. When I mean chalk, means that tablet is bought. Yes, counterfeit. Does not contain the active ingredient. Either one. Like I said, in the substandard, it does not in the standard way, so it contains in the substandard way. It does not contain the active ingredient in the right proportion, or there's another thing inside. That's what I tag as chalk.
So that means we may think we are treating malaria, but we're not treating malaria.
You are taking something that's like another word is called a placebo. That's what I call chalk. It does not contain anything.
But how come it's now becoming rampant?
Yes, now that's what I said. The reason it's becoming rampant earlier was we are not regulating our accessibility to drugs. Anybody can get drugs in this country, whereas you're supposed to see a medical professional and they will tell you, okay, this is the one you should get. That's one. Regulation also comes from the country, from our government agencies. The drugs that they import into this country, how well are they standardized and regulated? People just smuggle things into the country. And so when they smuggle it in, they can smuggle chalk or smuggle substandard and people use it. I know that is trying, I know that they are trying, but how? What's the level? Because the thing is that in other countries, other clients that are well developed, you don't easily get. That's why I always preach it that accessibility to drug is well regulated. So even if a substandard comes in, because the professionals are well trained to understand the difference between substandard or counterfeit and real drug that contain the excipient. I don't want to mention original here. The professionals know where to procure those standard drugs. So you now see the professional before you get your drug, you are sure you are getting a standard drug. With time, the substandard ones that have been coming to the company smuggled in, when they expire, the person bringing it has lost money, will not bring it again. But when they are not well regulated, anybody brings something in, and because they are not well regulated in accessibility, anybody can go and buy anything, and they do not differentiate between a standard and substandard. Those ones that are substandard will continue to sell. So you see why it's becoming rampant. Easy accessibility and regulation.
Okay.
So the few ones that are just there are the ones that are using their own volition to ask. Before they take any drug, they must ask. There are people there that say before they take it, they must ask a professional, But we are saying everybody should be able to ask a professional, seek advice before getting any drug that has to do with anything you're taking to your system.
Besides asking a professional, shouldn't it also be, the responsibility of those selling the drugs to ensure that they educate you on what they are selling to you?
No, yes, did you hear what
the
you
pharmacist.
Well, the truth is that number one, is the only pharmacist that dispense drugs?
But it's expected that pharmacists are the ones.
There's expectation, there's reality. In our country, I said something earlier. I'm not exonerating pharmacists here, but I'm looking at our environment. I said something earlier that easy accessibility to drugs in this country. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry has access to drugs. That's the truth. In other clients, man, it's not like that. So you come to a pharmacy and you get the drug, and the pharmacist explains to you and ABC what are the necessary things to do. But your next neighbor did not go to the pharmacy, went to a nearby chemist, feels, or if he doesn't have the time and feels he or she knows better, they're going to a pharmacist that you have gone to ask. He just saw someone on the way hawking the drug and buys and drink and develop resistance. You'd have done the right thing, you did not have resistance, but because of that person you got it, which I explained earlier from the parasite aspect, and so that is spreading, becoming rampant. What happens there now? It's not because of that person that was hawking has easy access to those drugs. That was why that your neighbor could get access to it. The pharmacist has done his own job, but the other person did not do his own job. So what happens? You can see how rampant is becoming. So that is a collaborative effort.
Okay.
Everybody don't want to go and see the pharmacist. They want to, because you can't force people. Everybody can make their decision. So you will not now blame a pharmacist for the fault for somebody not coming to see him. Are you going to force him to come? So the only way you can do is to I always tell people, the one you can control, meaning that the government should be able to control access to those drugs. Then that will now compel that person to say, I can't buy from them. The hawker doesn't have access to this drug. I'll be forced to go to the pharmacy that Olamide went to and saw a pharmacist. But when you have access options to buy from hawkers or people that are not well trained, you can get access to substandard drugs.
All right. I saw a documentary, very short documentary, I think about 4 years ago, in one country in the sub-Saharan Africa, where they talked about the fact that most of the citizens have become resistant to malaria due to the medications they were taking.
Yes.
So the question is, has there been any thorough research, that has, exposed some of the reasons why the resistance has come into play? And is it also possible that they've, found a solution to the resistance, especially because of I don't know if there's a special parasite, outside now that's making people resistant to it? Because I think that clip was as old as 4 years ago.
Okay, good question. Most times, I think maybe the clip you saw was the one from South Asia, because most of this resistance comes from the South Asian parts. It usually comes from, so those areas are areas that poverty is stricken, population-wise, they are more like India, for example. And so you always get those things that start from there, then the strain now moves to other economy. And I think they have different alleles, meaning strains that I think about 2 or 3. So I think even in Nigeria too, they have to try to study some. For you to be able to study a strain, you're making researches to it. And that's why you even see that you have talking about malaria vaccine, we are trying to give and see how accessible it can be, so that people don't easily come down, or the effects not much. So definitely, researches are always occurring, especially when people begin to notice a resistant strain occurring. Now, you asked the question earlier concerning that people are they're not getting better from the antimalarial that they take. Before chloroquine was stopped, it was known that yes, this was becoming resistant. Then a new drug came into. There's that talk now. People are becoming, but it has not been well established that the artemisinin combination therapy resistance has now occurred and there's cross resistance. It has not been totally established, but there's this feelers now, because the world will not just look at Nigeria and say because
it is resistant
in Nigeria, no. They have to look at what is peculiar about Nigeria. If peculiarity about Nigeria is about people's attitude, they work on it. They will not say, but if they now say, oh, this strain is resistant here, and they take it to India, it's also resistant there, yes.
That's when they agree.
Yes, they agree, and more work will be. No, there's a continuous work, but they will not put more advanced work on it so that they can get something, because you cannot leave the world hanging, so that you not have another pandemic. Say, mosquitoes now, they are the Plasmodium, rather, the strain. Yes, the strain now is not resistant, or cross resistant everywhere, and so it doesn't work again. No, we all people, I think they are even more antimalarials coming into the country, of that particular one that WHO have actually made available to be used, the antimicrobial combination therapy. So that will tell you that it has not been accepted, but there's these fillers. And like I said, these fillers are occurring because of our own peculiar issues, the accessibility to drugs easily, standardization of drug overuse and the likes. But research all is ongoing. Yes, COVID affected, but the research is still ongoing.
Okay, so what do we do? How do we begin to mitigate and, help ourselves stay away from this resistant issue?
Looking at that, we can deft from the effects, because if you look at the effect that anti-drug resistance will cause, you now know where to get the solution into. The effect can definitely look at from the economic aspect. If you are here in Alameda now, you have you come down with malaria, drug resistant malaria. You've taken an anti-malaria drug and it's not working, meaning that the organism is still there doing its harm, causing the weakness, tiredness, headache, fever. You can't be here interviewing me, right?
Of course.
That might affect people that are close to you, people that depend on you for money and the like. So there's economic aspect. Your productivity has been reduced. That affected your family also. Then it tends to increase morbidity and mortality, in the sense that if that drug is not going to work, the malaria parasite can continue acting. That can lead to death or can cause other disease affect other organs. And let's talk about facts. Statistics, look from this angle. Okay. 97% of Nigerians are at risk of coming down malaria.
How many percent?
97% of Nigerians.
Well, of course. I wanted to be sure that you would give it that much.
That much, yes. You are part of the system.
Yes.
According to the, I think the World Malaria Report in 2021, I talked about that in one of your programs then, where they said in the global cases, Nigeria has the highest cases, about 26.6%.
Yes.
Out of that death, you have 31% of that death. Then in West Africa alone, Nigeria cases in Nigeria is about 54. In West Africa, the number of malaria, Nigeria is about 54%, meaning half of the cases in West Africa
happens in Nigeria.
So Nigeria is actually a focus. So if you look at that,
is there a reason for why we
have that?
That's yes.
Peculiarity of our environment. If you look at what leads to malaria itself, those poverty, hygiene, and the like. That's why we always look at the basis from the foundation, because if the environment is clean and drainages are clear and like, you tend to reduce it. That is why the Nigeria demographic, I think the demographic health survey data in 2018, it showed that malaria prevalence is reducing. From 2010, it was about 42%. Then in 2018, that the check that survey was about 23%, meaning that the government is trying to do something about it.
Okay.
Yes, so it's reducing, but even if it's reducing, you are going to commemorate that to your population. So you will see the population is increasing.
Yes, because
are you sure it's reducing? No. There's a potential to show, because in 2010 it was 42%, now it's 23%. Yes, but your attitude, because the government is doing its own part. You see what I'm saying? The effect is that it's going to increase morbidity and mortality for the resistance, because the government is doing its own part to try and reduce it. Why your attitude not taking when you have leading to resistance? Resistance means that you're not going to be working again. You're going to be increasing that mortality rate. Okay, so one of the things the government tried to do was this. There's this National Malaria Strategic Plan, NMSP, which they said, okay, between 2021 and 2025, we should be having a zero malaria-free environment in Nigeria. That's not possible, but their goal is to take that thing from 23%, which I mentioned in 2018, to about 10%. That's their plan. How do you take that to 10% when you have a plan through maybe providing of mosquito-treated net, make your environment clean, you have other things. One of the things they do is this spark, sulfadazine, pyrimethamine, then amodiaquine that they give during seasonal. I saw them sometimes during this last month or so in some houses, going to give your kids. How will that goal be achieved, less than 10%, if our attitudes is making us becoming drug resistant by not taking your drugs as you're supposed to take, by overusing it, or the same government that is trying to make that plan does not regulate when you're having substandard coming into the environment, or you're not taking your drug complementarily and the like. So on one hand, you're working on a goal of less than 10% by providing nets, by doing other things. On the other hand, people's behavior will make it difficult for you to achieve that goal. So you see that's the effect of that anti-malaria drug resistance, because it's no longer working. So there's increase in morbidity and mortality. The government is trying to bring it down, but your own issue has made that there's that increase in morbidity and mortality. So that you see, that's where another effect comes from. But the last effect appears to be gross resistance, meaning that you are doing your own well, but the next person is not doing. So the strain goes round. The strain, that's cross resistance of that strain, and so that's one of the effects of the antimalarial drug resistance. So the solution to it generally, let's start from the basics.
Okay.
Your environment must be clean. Prevention. I always look at prevention is always better than cure. It's easier to prevent and less costly than to treat.
You know, I remember the last World Health Day. The theme was Our Planet, Our Health.
Yes.
And I've been wondering, because most times they say most of our ailments come from our surroundings and our environment.
Yes.
So, you know, that's also brought it to my mind that could that be the reason why we're becoming so resistant to, besides just malaria, there are other ailments that people take medications for and they no longer work.
That's a different ball game entirely. Surroundings will not a dirty environment or not taking care of your surroundings will not cause resistance, but will make you prone to the ailment and make you prone to a resistant strain.
And that's
you can get
that's a step in the direction.
Yes,
that
you can get a resistant strain. Like if that mosquito that took that resistant strain from somewhere that was misbehaving, I use that word in quotes, not taking his drug well, begins to breed in an environment that has drainage issues, that is dirty, people sleeping in houses that are bushy, likes and all. You see, it breeds there and bite someone, a person can get that strain. So that dirty environment is leading to getting a resistant strain, not like causing resistance in that person, because you are getting a resistant strain that will not develop to resistance.
Leading to it.
Yes, leading to it. So yes, the environment can cause that. Then generally you will not say because the environment is dirty, resistance occur. No, because you can get a resistant strain. So you're always leading to it.
You know,
so
when people have malaria more than once in a month, they believe they are resistant to drugs.
That's on that thing. I think thank you for being practical on that.
Yes.
When you say having that once in a month, is it every time of the year? Because now, if you look at it, malaria is mostly prone during the rainy season. So you have to be sure of that.
It's seasonal.
That's why you see that I talked about one of the programs, one of the ways this national malaria strategy plan is to give out this anti-malaria drug. They give it mostly in the north, Borno State, even Abuja. They do it seasonally. That's what they do. For children and the likes to prevent. Because during the rainy season, that's when you have gutters, you have drainages that are filled up, deaths come. So that's a breeding site for the malaria parasite. So they tend to give it that during time. But some other, during the dry season, it might not likely occur like that. So with that, you now say, okay, it's seasonal, you want to give. But resistance, for it to occur, the organism must be in the body. You cannot say an environment. No. Environment makes you prone to infections, disease, and the likes. Dirty environment, not environment, dirty environment rather. But it doesn't make you now say because the environment is dirty, you are now resistant to drug. No. It doesn't always occur. You can get a resistant strain from an environment that breeds a resistant strain. You cannot get that resistant strain from that. And also, you mentioned generally, that what happened to antimalarials is also the same that goes generally with even antimicrobials and the likes. If you take a counterfeit antimicrobial, that's even worse, microorganisms for infections and all. The people easily develop resistance to those things. Because if you take a counterfeit drug, the organism just quickly proliferate and it's not working. Or you are used to one particular one that you misuse, take for 5 days, take for 2 or 3 days, resistance can occur from there. These are the same pattern.
At the back end, you mentioned the fact that if you take a particular anti-malaria, you should try to change it. You shouldn't take one anti-malaria for too long.
Yes.
So I wanted to know, how long is too long?
Okay, yes, that's a good question. Like, we looked at it this way. If you've taken a drug consistently for between 6 to 1 year, I always advise personally that you try and switch. So you take this anti-malaria this month, 2 months time, you want to treat because you had the symptom, you're repeating it. Another 2 months time, the body is already getting used to it. So switch to another anti-malaria. So that at every point in time, the malaria parasite is not expecting one particular anti-malaria coming. You're just getting the anti-malaria by surprise. This is what is there. No longer artemisinin. Okay.
You're describing this parasite.
Yes, they are living. They are living. So they have this backbone that most of the times they are they just let's make something stronger for this thing that's coming. So you give another thing, and more or less you see here about people talking about even genotype and anti-malaria, sickle
yes,
cell?
I think I heard that AS barely have malaria.
I think it's okay. Whether AS or SS is there's a scientific explanation for that. The malaria parasite attacks the hemoglobin of the red blood cell. Hemoglobin is a part of the red blood cell that helps to carry oxygen to the body for tissues and the like to make you. So when you breathe in this oxygen, hemoglobin carries it. It's in the red blood cells. The red blood cells is moving, carrying hemoglobin to different parts of the body, so that your glucose and all will be used together to give you energy. So that's the biochemical one. I'm just giving a layman's view. Now, the malaria parasite feeds on that part of the hemoglobin. So, but the hemoglobin produces something that is dangerous to the parasite initially from the body. So when the parasite comes to see, the parasite has a way of converting that thing that the hemoglobin produces to something that is not toxic to it and feeds on it to multiply. So that's why somebody having malaria is coming down with tiredness and weakness, because once it's carrying oxygen, something is eating it. So you'll be weak, you'll be tired. And it's destroying the red blood cell. You now begin to have issue of anemia and the likes. You give an anti-malaria drug. An anti-malaria drug is now providing something that is more, so that in as much as the parasite is eating that thing that has oxygen, the anti-malaria is giving something that has more oxygen. So they're called radicals. They kill the malaria parasite. So they are still acting on the blood cell. So as I tell people that are taking anti-malaria, that also most times take a blood tonic along after you are done, because the malaria drug is also acting on the red blood cells that the malaria parasite is acting. So you see both of them fight together.
New.
That's also why they tell you not to take vitamin C, because the malaria drug requires that oxygen to kill that parasite. So when you are taking vitamin C, it's an antioxidant. So you are counteracting the effect of that drug. It's supposed to help you. So that's why the notion that say don't take vitamin C.
Or don't take some fruits while taking anti-malaria. I used to think that's not true.
No, it's true, but a lot of people tend to mix it up. Some people will say don't take multivitamins. Don't take even
this blood tonic it's new.
No, the point is that you don't take it the same time when you are done with the anti-malaria for the blood tonic. But for vitamin C, not at all at the same time. Because I want to take orange juice with it. No, it's not advisable, because you are going to remove the radicals, that oxygen that the drug is supposed to make the parasite get exposed and die. So you are going to do that. So they tell you, but people tend to say, okay, multivitamins. Why they say multivitamins? That most multivitamins might contain some level of vitamin C, ascorbic acid. So just avoid it. But the point is the vitamin C, not necessarily the more multivitamin. So that should be noted. Now back to that genotype you mentioned. So for an AA patient, he has a normal hemoglobin that has that oxygen part. So the parasite, I know I told you to convert the toxic ones to a non-toxic form so that they can eat, feed, and multiply. For a sickle cell AS patient, the cell is sickle. So that's why one of the symptoms you see that we have the pains and they are weak, tired, and they have body pains is that sickle cell cannot flow well in the blood system. The cell that is sickle like an S, so that prevents oxygen from going to the system. So that hemoglobin SS is deoxygenated, doesn't have oxygen. It doesn't have oxygen. The parasite will not see something to feed on, to multiply. That's why you see that they won't come down with malaria, because their red blood cells already in a sickle shape that doesn't have oxygen. It's deoxygenated. And it's deoxygenated. I remember I told you the parasite acts on the hemoglobin that has oxygen. So you will not see, so you will just be there. And for you to cause an effect of a disease to occur, it means there's a particular level the parasite will get to. That's why malaria bites you now, you won't come down with malaria. It will multiply. It gets to a level before you now start having those symptoms of malaria.
And sometimes you just wonder, I wasn't exposed to mosquito bites, so what happened?
What happened? So that's something that has been there becoming. So when I say mosquito just bite me now, no, you can take a preventive, but you won't get it immediately. Your body is a first responder. It will now multiply.
When they say prevention is better than cure,
yes.
Should we start taking anti-malaria ahead of when we fall ill?
That's the wrong notion, because you're taking an anti-malaria, meaning something that's fighting against malaria. You don't have malaria. So but they are preventives. They are they call it prophylactic drugs to prevent you from coming down malaria. So meaning that before malaria someone has malaria, there are different stages. The malaria parasite enters from the liver to different stages, and also is when it has gone into the blood that you see the effect. So a preventive might likely prevent the parasite walk from the liver to every other organs and the likes. So that's why preventive comes into play, because you are preventing malaria. But preventing malaria means that you are preventing you from coming down with the ailment. For you to come on with the ailment,
so there
the
are
parasite should be,
medications.
yes, now there are medications. The parasite should be in the blood.
Okay.
And that's when, so when you stop it from that liver point stage to get, that's where you talk about preventing.
You know, I had to ask this because when I was younger, whenever any one of us is down, my mom makes sure she treats everybody.
Person.
So, and I'm sure most parents are still doing the same thing. Once one is down, they treat every other one with the same anti-malaria.
If you ask me, that's an avenue to even be, that can lead to drug resistance.
Oh.
You better you take a preventive down. That's why I tell people, you are taking a difference between an anti-malaria from the word, and like people go up, I see people that go take antibiotics for prevention. I say you are killing the normal flora in your body because you're taking an antibiotic.
I think this is one thing that people have misunderstood for too long.
Yes.
The pre-drugs and the anti.
Anti is against it. So you're taking an anti-malaria, fighting against malaria that is not existing. But they are preventive. So I want to take a preventive drug against malaria. Yes, they are preventive. The SPs are allowed, they use a preventive. That's why you see they call IPT. Pregnant women that they give that every 3 months or thereabout. Do they combat malaria? They don't. But they go to the people to give them. It's called IPT, intermittent preventive therapy. So that you are preventing it from coming, but not taking an anti-malaria. Because anti-malaria is supposed to go and fight. It's not there fighting anything. So that can even lead to, that's talking about overuse now. So thank you for bringing that in. Now that can lead to resistance. So by the time the person comes down with the malaria, it's not going to work.
Wow.
It's not going to work. So it's still on that level. So we're still on the issue of a solution. So
yes.
Like I mentioned, that preventive measures, clean hygiene, use insecticide, insecticide-treated nets, then this intermittent preventive therapies most times that they give. Then one other way is that you should always seek the advice of a professional before you get an anti-malaria drug, so they guide you better. So I want to believe that your last words to our viewers. Finally, you might get the drugs from a reputable pharmacist. Don't just get the drug from anywhere you want to get because you have malaria. Just go to this place and buy. Especially those in the rural areas. Ask, because that's where people tend to misuse. True. People tend to take fake drugs. No proper education. No proper education, no proper even monitoring. So that's where people tend to use those drugs more. So if you're in the rural areas, you're listening to this program, always seek the advice of the pharmacist or the medical professional before getting drugs. That's just what I'll say. All right. Thank you so much, Pharmacist Adamatie. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you. All right, viewers, I'm sure you've learned one or two things, and you must ensure you always seek professional advices before you get yourself treated. All right, that's all we'll leave it for Healthy Live It for today. I'll see you again next week. I am Olamide Alhassan. Bye for now.